Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. I'm definitely toxic and vindictive. So when my boyfriend broke up with me, I knew what I had to do. He and I dated for 9 months. And you could say that I was a little overbearing. If you guys saw what this man looked like, maybe you'd understand. He's the type of guy that all the girls want to get with. Not only is he super handsome, but he's also very successful. And he's a great guy. Comes from a great family and he's really close to them. I, on the other hand, grew up in the foster system, so having a family was always my biggest dream. And when I met his family, they took me in right away. His mom and I essentially became best friends. His dad would take me out to dinners and lunch, and they basically adopted me as their daughter. Here's when things started going wrong. I was extremely jealous and I basically didn't let him do anything. Every time he wanted to go out with his friends, I would start a fight. Anytime he would bring up a female friend from the past, I would simply threaten to break up with him. Trust me, I recognized that what I was doing was wrong, but part of me just couldn't control myself. I was willing to do anything to make him stay with me. Eventually, he got really sick of me, started mentioning that he wanted to take a break. So that's when I told him that I was pregnant. Was I pregnant? Absolutely not. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. The first time he threatened to break up with me, I told him that I was pregnant. It was obviously a lie and he knew it, so he basically still walked out on me. So in order to get his attention again, I decided to go to his family and tell them that I was pregnant. And they all believed me. His mom and dad even invited me to go live with them during the pregnancy. At first I said yes, but then I was like, hold on a second. How am I gonna fake a pregnancy? So to get myself out of that, I told him that I thought I was pregnant, but I actually wasn't. Yep, I'm starting my makeup all over again at this point. I had way too many layers on. During the time we were on a break, I basically followed him around everywhere just to make sure that he wasn't hooking up with any girls. Finally, 2 weeks later, he called me and told me that he missed me. We got back together, but the same thing happened. I was still jealous and controlling. But this time, he was becoming more and more jealous. So much so that he started trying to control the way that I was dressing. Around this time, we started having huge fights. He would punch the wall right by my head. I would throw things at him, even threw a knife at him once. But part of me liked that he was so jealous and toxic. He was obsessed with me. And he broke up with me again, and 2 months later, he was engaged. And guess what? His family invited me to their engagement party. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. That's when I get the invitation for his engagement party. At this point, it seems that my ex's parents thought we separated on good terms. So, of course, I showed up to that engagement party. As soon as my ex saw me, he came straight to me and told me to leave. And I told him that I was welcome because his parents had invited me. He gave me a whole speech about how we were over and I needed to accept it. But of course, not one single part of me was willing to accept that. Then he called me an Uber, so I actually did end up leaving. When the wedding comes around, I was the first guest to show up. As soon as his parents saw me, they welcomed me. So I went and sat down at the parents' table. When my ex came out, he nearly fell over. Mind you, this is the first time I'm meeting his wife. I went up to her and told her that I was an ex of his. That's when she looked at me and said, when did you guys date? I said we dated for 9 months. And then she says that they had been dating at the same time. So then a whole bunch of drama goes down. She goes to him and starts slapping him. He starts to cry. And then his parents asked me to leave. So I did. The next month, I followed her everywhere. Finally told me to leave her alone and that they had already gotten a divorce. So my plan worked. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get back with my ex. What should I do? My husband told me he wants a second wife. We are practicing Mormons and my husband believes that he deserves a second wife. When we first got engaged, I told him that the only way I would marry him was if he did not take on more wives. We've been married now for 6 months and he's already begging me to get a second wife. Part of me understands why he wants it, but the other part of me thinks it's just gratuitous. No man needs more than one wife. I met a few single women at church and he's been flirting with them non-stop. One of them in particular has been flirting back. Everyone in our church knows that my husband is not allowed to have another wife. This one girl keeps trying to get into our lives. She basically shows up everywhere we do, and she's always trying to catch his eye when we're at church. I found out a dirty little secret about her. A few years ago, she used to be a stripper. I threatened her to stay away from my husband. If not, I would tell him that she was a stripper. She actually told me that my husband wouldn't believe me and that she was gonna marry him anyway. I caught them texting and she was telling him how lonely she is. I told my husband that she was a stripper and he said that he didn't care. That she needed saving? What the heck should I do now? I don't want a second wife. My husband told me he wants a second wife update. That's when my husband told me that he still wants to marry her and that the church could save her. Since the news of her being a stripper in the past didn't turn him off, I had to start digging some more. I went onto her Facebook and started looking back through all of her pictures. I also went on her friends' and family's Facebooks too. On one of her friends' accounts, I found a post from 2012. They were partying it up in the Greek islands. As I looked closer into the picture, I saw there were 2 men with them. I started Googling the men's names and I found that they were both pimps. The more I searched, the more pictures I found of her with this one guy. And in some of the pictures, they were even making out. This is when it hit me. She was probably a pro. And this guy was pimping her out. My husband is so 2000s that he doesn't even have a computer. So I decided to go print out all of the evidence. I printed out all of the pictures of her and this guy, some of her family's pictures of her drinking and partying. I made my husband his favorite dinner and then I sat him down. Told him I would never accept a second wife, especially her. When I showed him all the pictures, he told me he felt sick. Apparently, she told him that she was a nun. Remember I said they had been texting? Well, they never stopped texting. Then he confessed that she even sent him a naked picture. Part 2 is my husband told me he wants a second wife update. And he finally accepted that this woman had been a pro in her past and a stripper. He said that he would stop speaking to her. Mind you, this all happened like 2 days ago. I asked my husband husband to show me his phone so that I could see the messages between them. He handed his phone over and started to cry. He said that she had lied to him and told him that she was a nun. Apparently, after she became a stripper, she decided to leave that life and become a nun. How stupid is my husband that he actually believed her? That's when I saw that she had sent him plenty of nudes. And I asked my husband, "You think that this woman is a nun?" And he said, "You're right, I should have known." We went to church and told on her. Now everyone in the church knows her truth. But things get worse. After she found out that we told on her, she came over to our house and started threatening us. Wouldn't let her in the house, but then she begged my husband to let her in. And he opened the damn door. That's when she begged my husband to take her on as a second wife, and that she would be the best wife and even better than I am. While I'm standing right there. Thankfully, my husband used his one brain cell and said no. That's when she grabbed my hair and started banging my head against the wall. Stupid husband stood there watching. I had to fight her off alone. That's when she looked at both of us and said that we would regret it, and she ran away. And my husband had another confession. They had hooked up once. Part 3 is up. My husband told me he wants a second wife update. That's when he confessed that they had hooked up once. That's when it all made sense to me. She was so upset because they had already hooked up. Then he told me that he had promised her a ring. At this point, my husband has cheated on me. I have grounds to divorce him. I was actually so upset I left the house. A few hours after his confession, he calls me and tells me to come right back home. And when I get home, all our clothes were ripped up. This crazy psycho girl came back to our house, took scissors, and started cutting up all our clothes. She even cut up my wedding dress. She flushed all my makeup down the toilet. She actually stole one of my husband's fire weapons. Now this is the thing that really scares us. We don't know what she's capable of. My husband is so stupid though that he doesn't want to report her to the police. He feels guilty for having taken advantage of her, which in all honesty, he definitely did. He slept with her and promised her a ring, packed up what I had left of my clothes, and I left my husband. I'm meeting a lawyer tomorrow and I'm gonna ask him for a divorce. I just honestly can't believe how stupid he is. And now I'm scared for my life. Thankfully, she doesn't know where my parents live. I'm also leaving the Mormon church. I'm taking my parents on a vacation. F you, husband.